Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. Senate Bill 35 simply increases the one-time personal income tax credit for non-family adoptions from $2,000 to $4,000. Urge adoption.
This bill simply raises the speed limit for slow-speed vehicles that the legislature allowed a few years ago to be on roads within municipalities. The current speed limit is 25 that they can operate on those roads. This raises that if authorized by this ordinance. Nothing can happen unless the city agrees with it in their ordinance to go to 35 miles an hour. Our urge adoption.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the rules bundle for the Department of Environmental Protection. It contains 13 separate rules. 13 separate rules by urge to pass this bill.
Question for the Senate. Question for the Senate. Shall the bill pass? The Senator Twain.
Thanks, Mr. President. The purpose of this program is to attract and retain teachers who are certified in math and science to teach in public schools in areas where a critical need for teachers in those fields exists. By providing that eligible applicant who has signed an agreement to teach in the identified area for $2,000 by the county board. Urge the adoption of the bill.
This is Bill 295. It's the DHHR rules bundle. It contains rules from DHHR as well as the healthcare authority. Senate Bill 328 is a bill which conforms West Virginia law concerning the issuance and maintenance of commercial driver's licenses with federal law. The focus of these changes is on the cost requirements that CDL drivers maintain current medical certification. They meet minimum federal and medical standards regarding the operation of the vehicles. And it also prevents these drivers from texting while driving. Urge passage of the bill.
Senator Twain.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill establishes a plan known as FACTS, which stands for Fair, Accountable, Credible, Transparent, and Systematic for Higher Education. The chief purpose of the plan is to meet objectives, including providing reliable information to policymakers, attracting, motivating, and retaining well-qualified employees, compensating employees equitably and competitively, and improving the process of job evaluations, and analyzing market data against benchmark jobs and comparing average salaries of each employee's class to the others and to the peers. In 2005, this body passed what was Senate Bill 603, which provided flexibility to WVU and Marshall. As part of that bill, we were to study the flexibility issues that we provided to WVU and Marshall, and what of those flexibilities could be transferred down to the other institutions. Some of those flexibilities have been included in this bill. This was from a study from the Policy Commission that made recommendations. It exempts from the restrictions imposed on 5G11 as it relates to procuring architectural and engineering services. It exempts from requirement to provide certain documentation for architects regarding construction when making a request for payment from the state auditor. It requires the state auditor to accept electronic requisitions, or what they call W11s in most cases. And it authorizes the boards of governors to submit electronic requisitions for payment of expenses for board members. And there were 3 or 4 other provisions of flexibility that were included in that. Also in Senate Bill 603 was outlining that the legislature retains the personnel issues related to higher education, but that we should do a study, and that study are the results of what are coming in here. The study was partially concluded in 2009. It was further completed in 2010 with recommendations that are contained in this legislation. Urge the adoption of Senate Bill 330.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 387 will effectuate federal law allowing honorably retired law enforcement officers to carry concealed weapons without permit nationally. It would also require the state police to create a firearm force which would meet the federal requirements. Our passage
is required by federal healthcare reform. The exchange is established within the Insurance Commission. The bill sets out the required functions of the exchanges and sets up a governing board to oversee its operation. Membership on the board is spelled out in the bill, as are the duties of the board. The bill provides for fees to be charged for health insurance carriers and grants rulemaking authority to the insurance commissioner to accomplish the requirements of the bill. I urge passage of this bill.
Stalking or harassment protected order of a crime, it sets out penalties for first, second, and third offenses, which are consistent with violations of similar types of orders. I urge passage of the bill.
Question for the Senator Shaw.
A commission that was put together by former Governor Wise and former Governor Bush from Florida looked and came up with 10 steps in 10 areas that we should focus on from a digital learning platform. As you well know, kids today learn differently through technology, and this will adapt that into the state. I think this is one of the more forward-thinking pieces of legislation that this body has probably taken on education that I have been involved in my 19 years here. The fact that we are going to embrace the digital world and actually and make sure that it is going to be into our school system on a regular basis is, I think, very monumental that we do this. The other aspect of this bill is really related to the middle school and restructuring middle school to make sure that we redo the curriculum for comprehensive middle schools. This means that kids will now have the basics in vocational and technical education, be able to have that aspect in the middle school level. And I urge the adoption of it.
The Senator from Junior Center, the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee Substitute Bill 552 makes financial exploitation of elderly, protected people, or incapacitated adults a crime. The financial exploitation is intentional misappropriation and misuse of personal funds. It requires restitution and says that financial institutions are allowed to report suspected suspected exploitation and are removed from suit for such reporting. Also indicates that public officers and employees are mandated reporters and they are removed from liability officer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 582 cleans up and makes very clear what has to be on a donor quality seal. It says it must be, say, it's official seal for the Commission of West Virginia. The name must be their proper name on the full proper name as they sign. It must have the expiration date on the seal. And most importantly, this does not affect notaries that currently have their notary public listed on the deed of movement. So they already appointed, have a notary seal. They don't have to this renew their seal.
Bill 2464 is the update to the ethics bill, which has several new requirements in the bill, including additional employment of a public official, job title, general description of duties, name and address of employer. Also includes a definition of reportable business interests. Requires information on any nonprofit organization which the individual spouse is a director or officer. As we discussed last week, the amendment that was adopted on the Senate side requires the revolving door provision goes into effect January 1, 2012, as opposed to the House bill, which made it just the effective date of the bill. It also, this bill requires disclosure of spousal interest in incomes, and our bill exempted board members who had spouses who weren't involved in the activity of that board as long as they weren't receiving any compensation.